Tap into a whole new world of financial possibilities. Genie, get it to get it.
Keeping you ahead in the chaotic, competitive and complex business world is our aim in BISNOMICS, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. I'm Harinda, back again here today with a unique topic, volunteering. Now, one would really think, Harindu, seriously, is that a topic we should be talking about in a business show? But did you know that worldwide, according to some estimates taken up a few years back, there is almost 1 billion volunteers engaged in different facets of activities. Even in Sri Lanka, there's a very strong volunteering community. But what exactly is volunteering? And most importantly, if you're a business, in this world and era where we speak about community engagement, making your community stakeholders a part of your social responsibility initiatives, how can you really engage with these volunteers? What are the options, the channels and the platforms available? Let's talk about that and more in today's episode of BISNOMICS. And joining me for this very insightful discussion is the founder CEO of Good People, a social network for volunteering and donor management, Harinda Fonseka. Harinda, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to BISNOMICS.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Harinda, now let's address the real question here. Volunteering was always seen to, at least it used to be seen as something that people would do part-time, as a hobby, maybe some people would do it for the fashion of it, but if that was a few decades back. Today, I believe it's a different story. How do you see volunteering really evolving in today's business context and in today's world?
So, volunteering has always been part of our society, especially in Sri Lanka. If you go back several centuries, you will see Dayaka Sabhas as well as Vava Sabhas as well as Shramadanas. We've heard these things.
Absolutely.
Now, what has changed over the years is that the number of issues, the complexity of these issues have risen over the years, as well as because of technology, we now see what's happening and we are more exposed to the issues as well as what people are doing in the society. So both these points have contributed to raising awareness about the volunteerism. Now, having said that, if one were to look at volunteering as a spectrum in terms of the seriousness as well as the importance of volunteerism, we would say on one end of the spectrum, there are individuals as well as organizations understanding that in order to address these complex as well as diverse challenges that are rapidly growing around the world as well as in Sri Lanka, starting from, let's say, climate change to widening inequalities, people understand volunteers will need to play a crucial role to address these issues. So they sincerely believe volunteers can play a crucial role. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, there might be individuals as well as organizations who might view volunteerism as a way to launder their reputation or to maximize their profits or to increase their social status.
Hide their sins.
In some ways. So the thing is this, human civilization depends on free labor with good intention, right?
The good intention part really matters.
It sure does. Now, some see that and then they incorporate that into actually addressing big issues in the society, and some see that as a way to exploit. So the important part is that we need to make sure that in this spectrum, we need to bring many people over to their side that is going to add value to the society in a positive way. In order to do that, there are two things that we need to do. Appreciating the volunteers' time, because it's a non-renewable resource, as well as acknowledging and appreciating their skills and talents that they are contributing. So if you are looking at it from that perspective, of course, I think we will be able to achieve something meaningful.
Harinda, now, when you look at the number of people involved in volunteering, especially locally and globally, there are different estimates, but you'll probably have a better idea than I do. How big is the volunteering sector? And I want to demystify this, because here in BISNOMICS, we love demystifying and debunking any wrong thoughts or misconceptions. Is it correct if I use the term volunteering industry?
So the thing is this, if we use the word industry, some might think actually we can industrialize volunteering. With that, there will be many unintended negative consequences. To my understanding, industrialism means getting what you got before faster and cheaper, right? So if you try to approach volunteerism as a one size fits all kind of a solution,
Like a silver bullet.
we will definitely encounter issues in terms of volunteering. In terms of the issues, let's say if you're trying to eradicate hunger or poverty, each country, each community, each setting will need different interventions. So we need to understand that it needs to be customized and catered to that need. So hence why I'm a bit reluctant to use the word industry.
So sector is a safe word.
Sector is a safe word. Having said that, if somebody were to use the word industry, then it's good to be mindful exactly the pros and cons about it. But in terms of the number 1 billion, that's the most recent report back from 2018, I believe. UN,
1718, yes.
Yeah, UN released that. Now, from that, they believe that over 70% of the volunteering happens informal, which is helping out a neighbor, helping someone in the community. 30% of it is done through an organization, through a non-profit or a charity, whatnot. Now, again, if we define volunteering as something that is done with goodness, generosity, compassion, as an act of kindness, free without any payments, then one could ask, hey, what about parenting? What about taking care of your loved ones?
Or taking care of the elderly parents.
Exactly, right? So yes, I understand there are ways that some of these reports over the years have been utilizing to try and factor in these things. But we all understand that at one point or another, many human beings have helped someone else without expecting anything in return monetarily. So yes, it's safe to say that there's about 1 billion, but there's many more, and I think
Unaccounted for.
Unaccounted for.
Harinda, let's delve into the psychology behind volunteering, because end of the day, businesses also need to understand the psychology of our different actions and activities, and volunteering is one of those very, I would say, classic cases which is a little hard to demystify, since people who are busy even to do their normal work, we see them stopping everything and sometimes going on a weekend to volunteer for some charity or for some mission activity. And at the same time, what's really the reason for this? Is it the basic need to be a part of something good, or are we looking at different facets now beyond that? For example, we see and hear opportunities where they say, come and volunteer and improve maybe your teaching skills, your communication skills. Hasn't it gone beyond just wanting to be a part of something that feels good?
Yes and no, because the thing is, at the end of the day, different people have different motives when it comes to doing good, volunteering. Most volunteers are goal-oriented and purposeful. They understand why they are getting involved. But having said that, there can be multiple motives one could have when it comes to volunteering. It can be to gain experience so that they can build certain skills or learn about the society. It can be for strengthening social connections, right? When you are meeting individuals, new people, you start bonding with them, you start learning about their issues. It's a good way to practice empathy, exercise your empathy muscle in terms of working with different kinds of people and different individuals. But also, some of these motives can be directly related to schools, universities, and workplaces mandating them to volunteer in order to get a promotion or a raise or get into the university. So there can be multiple motives for one to volunteer, having said that, I think what's important is that we understand that we do not do any harm in the process of trying to actually do good. So if I may, if you have some time, I can
Absolutely,
give,
please.
I can give an example. One of the examples that I would think is that, let's say a business or a charity helping the volunteer tourism industry, volunteerism they call it. Right?
Volunteerism.
Volunteerism.
That's new to me.
Yes, so there's a term called volunteerism. So let's say there's a travel agency that is bringing a volunteer English teacher or a volunteer to teach English in a community. Now, when they are doing that, if their intention is to make sure the volunteers' well-being is met, and their enjoyment and fulfillment is their priority. If that's the case, there can be unintended consequences. Because in a school, if there is a vacancy for a teacher, and if the school is not filling that because the
volunteer is there,
and the agency or the people who are doing that are constantly telling the school, hey, keep it like that, because they are directly connected to their business model, let's say. So then comes the question, are we sustaining the problem, or are we meaningfully trying to address the problem? So I think it's important.
Very deep thought there. I think a lot of people would not look at that dimension.
Yeah, I think it's important that we work with all stakeholders in this case. So we need to work with the school to make sure that what is the need, and then how best to address it. We need to make sure that the teacher is meeting the requirements.
Correct. And not just doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah, and competent to actually deliver the content.
Yes.
Right? And then we need to work with, let's say, the Ministry of Education to make sure that, okay, do we have a pipeline to bring in an English teacher with time? We need to make sure that the relevant authorities from community leaders are involved in this whole decision-making process. And of course, if we start working like that collectively with a mission, with a goal and a mission to achieve that, then we can achieve a sustainable outcome.
Do you see a lot of potential for volunteerism in Sri Lanka?
Yes, absolutely. As long as it's done with careful thought process and done in a way that it's actually addressing the issue.
And
another example I can think of is in one of the things that I read is that in Cambodia, one of the volunteers have gone to teach these kids teach English, taught the ABCs song. Within the first week, all these 10-year-olds managed to master it, and then the teacher had asked, how come you actually picked up on this song so fast? First, they reluctantly didn't want to say anything. Then finally, they admit for the past 11 months, the past 7 volunteer teachers have also taught the same song. So then you ask the question, did these children get something meaningful or not? And what are we as a society doing to make sure that we actually make the best out of these resources that are available to us? So I think it needs to be done collectively, and we need to prioritize solving the problem versus prioritizing, I guess, growing your revenues or sustaining the problem or appearing to address a problem.
Purpose first, profit next.
Yeah, I think, and again, purpose also we can discuss. Purpose also can be actually defined by different people, different ways.
For sure.
And then it becomes a performative thing.
Matters there.
Yes.
I agree with you. And I think we brought in a nice new dimension to the discussion. Harinda, thank you for that. Harinda, now, there will be a lot of companies that are wondering, okay, look, you know what, we see a lot of volunteers. We also have a lot of social causes, social programs, CSR programs, and we would like to have these volunteers connected with us. Yes, in part, it also helps to bring down the cost, let's admit it. And at the same time, it also is a good way for the brand to really engage with the community and get their brands out there. But is that the right thinking, number one? And number two, what's the code they need to crack in order to connect with these volunteers? Because I don't think volunteers would go and volunteer for every organization out there.
Respectfully, I have to disagree in terms of the bringing down the cost part.
Okay.
So I think it's the rest I can, yes, partially agree with you.
So it's not right to say, or not right to think that having volunteers working with us will bring down the cost. That's not the right angle.
Well,
to look
I
at
think
things.
you know, some people can have the thought cross their mind, but having said that, I don't think if that's the primary intention or motive, then they are going to fail.
Okay.
Right, in terms of recruiting volunteers and retaining volunteers, because many of the volunteers are able to sense when things are not going right. If they feel and sense that they are being exploited, then of course they're going to leave, and it's going to backfire on the company in terms of the brand value as well as the community engagement.
So something all brands need to take note of.
Absolutely. So my understanding is a company is built to address an unmet need in the society through a product or a service, right? If that's the case, now when they are trying to deliver this fulfill this unmet need, if they see there's a role for volunteers or people to engage voluntarily,
It's a very clear-cut definition there.
Yes, well, I think it's important that we get really clear in terms of how and why and what we are going to do.
Absolutely.
So, if there is an opportunity to get people involved on a voluntary basis, then that needs to be clearly defined, shared. We are looking for volunteers for A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. Clearly defining the role, and then clearly defining when they want the volunteers, for what they want the volunteers for, why they need it, and how they want the volunteers for. So that will actually allow the company to build their brand, establish trust, because when volunteers do come, they will also be able to see whether this company is walking the walk.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether they're walking the talk, and whether they are being genuine in their intention.
Absolutely. And then and with over time, some of these companies might realize that some of these volunteers are really a really good fit for their organization. That might help with the hiring process also, because they have actually worked with it. But having said that, I need to emphasize that this is not a free pass to exploit free labor. And we need to be mindful about that.
Contrary to the common misconception.
Yeah, I think we need to be respectful, because at the end of the day, as I said earlier, volunteering is...
Get banking done to get back to your date. Get payments done in a flash to get on with your workout. Get your goals set to get on with your next chapter. Still don't get it? Download Genie, your money app, and tap into a whole new world of financial possibilities. Genie, get it to get it.
Something that the volunteers are giving out of the goodness of their heart.
Yes.
And if it's been exploited, it can always backfire.
Harinda, with regard to volunteers choosing organizations to go and volunteer, you work with volunteers, you know what their thinking is. What's their checklist before they pick an organization to go and volunteer? Is it the mission? Is it the track record? What are they looking at?
So different volunteers have different criteria. Some may not even think deep. Some may just think, okay, fine, they're organizing a musical beach cleanup or a concert to raise money to give it to this cause, and they may just go for the fun of it. But we are seeing that is changing here in Sri Lanka and around the world. Volunteers, because we all have only 24 hours. So we are becoming smarter in terms of who are we going to give our attention to.
And time too.
Right. And so if that's the case, they will be looking at what type of an organization is this? Is this organization aligned with my values, or I would like to be part of an organization or an ecosystem like this, and then get involved. But I think we need to look at long-term planning versus a one-time, once a year kind of a thing, because at the end of the day, more and more around the world, many companies are positioning themselves in a way to attract the best people in the society to come and work for them. And most of the youth that are entering the workforce, they do not want to work for a company that is actually negatively
Perceived or
hurting the society or the environment. They don't want to have that in their conscience. So we need to actually do that in a meaningful way without trying to ride the trends.
good way to put it. What benefits do companies get when they get these volunteers involved in their CSR activities versus getting their own staff to do it? Because the way I see it, a lot of companies we see sometimes they have their own CSR unit. Versus, yes, they could partner with a platform or they could partner with a volunteering organization. They could have volunteers coming and doing it. As you very correctly said, respectfully having them in the company, maybe giving them the due compensation for some of the activities too. My question is, Harinda, when you get volunteers involved, I believe that is a case of community engagement. You're getting the community to be a part of your organization. Having your own CSR staff versus community engagement, what's the benefit?
I think the key benefit is actually building your tribe, right?
Nice way to put it, the tribe.
Building a tribe, because if you're in an industry, if your company is adding value to the society through the products and services that you're offering, and then you are able to actually go beyond that and address some sort of a community need or an environmental need, clearly defining this is why we are doing this, and even the CSR staff can get involved. That's not an issue. But the thing is, they might choose to get involved voluntarily, or maybe they might be compensated. But the bigger component is that when the community sees these people are walking the talk, they build trust. Then they understand that. Then even the employee retention will be impacted, because if the employees see that the employer is actually doing what he or she has said, keeping their promises, then they will actually be more inclined to give their time and energy to them. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, again, they might be looking at these things begrudgingly, with cynicism, thinking, okay, fine, you know what, you have been treating us as employees really poorly.
And now you're trying to be very nice to the volunteers.
Yeah, so it can backfire, and of course, it's going to then it might impact performance directly in the company as well as retention.
For sure. Let's talk about CSR, corporate social responsibility. At one time, maybe a decade or so back, it was one of those nice to have features. Let's try to do something and look good. But I believe today it has changed. With sustainability coming in, CSR tends to look into the social and environmental sustainability, how well a business is looking after the environment and the people, the community. Amidst all this, Harinda, we hear words and terms like strategic CSR, how we do CSR not just for promotional benefits, but how we do CSR in a way it's aligned with our organizational mission and it contributes to the organization's long-term success. And I believe getting together with volunteers and working also is a part of an organization's CSR policy. But we keep the volunteerism for a little bit on the side now. Let's talk about CSR. How do you see CSR evolving in Sri Lankan enterprises over the last few years?
I think traditionally most of these CSR events have been organized by PR agencies and ad companies, traditionally speaking. So when they are doing these things, they are looking at it from a different lens, often from a virality point of view. Yes. How can we make this event go viral so that we can get more eyeballs to the event? And I think that strategy is failing and is slowly changing. What needs to happen is that we all know that the problems are growing. It's becoming complex and diverse. We all know that the resources that many of these companies have are limited, and they do not have a lot of resources to allocate towards doing good. So then people are looking at, okay, how best are we going to get strategic? So in terms of being strategic, I think it's important that you lead with good questions. You need to ask good questions from the charities that they work with, non-profits, as well as volunteers, as well as the CSR department. Why are we selecting this cause this year or this month? And how are we going to be sustainably adding value to this cause over the next few months or few years? So building partnerships is key, because at the end of the day, civilization is a team sport. Civilization is a
I think you
team
can say that again.
Civilization is a team sport. We all need to collectively contribute. In order to do that, the first thing is to build in trust. Because if the company and the charity and the volunteers and the community, as well as the beneficiaries of these activities, if they all trust each other, then in terms of spending your resources, there will be huge savings. Because then you're building on that relationship and you're making sure that you're addressing the problem and you're falling in love with solving the problem, not the solution. Because if you fall in love with the solution, you're going to be close-minded to all other possible solutions. So it's important that you look at the problem and you try and address it. But then again, there's no mandatory requirement for all companies to do CSR. One could say that if they pay their employees properly, a really good wage, as well as all their benefits, take care of their employees, that itself, they're doing something good.
Yes.
They don't have to go above and beyond.
And brag about it or boast about it or do external campaigns.
Yeah, plant trees or whatnot, right? If you are paying a good wage and taking care of your employees, they themselves might be able to go and actually buy the books, school books for their children, and you may not need to actually have a once a year book donation campaign from your company to your employees' children.
So CSR is not about hypocrisy, it's about doing the right thing from the start. I think some very good points there. Harinda, we are going to come back to more details on that. Another associated topic to this which we see is about the gig economy, where we see people, apart from their normal day jobs, also playing a little bit of a different tune to things. Like, for example, you can have an accountant by day and a musician by evening. And we see this a lot even in European countries. We sometimes see you might be doing a white collar job during the daytime till 5 o'clock. 5 to 7 you play music somewhere. At night you might be a bartender, and that's quite well accepted and respected. And we see this trend now coming up even in Sri Lanka. People, not necessarily for money, but sometimes for their passion, they are doing things. Now, you work with a lot of the millennials, the younger crowd. How do you see the gig economy really shaping up in Sri Lanka?
So just to clarify, my understanding about gig economy is usually related to platform economies in terms of deliveries or taxi services, where people do have a full-time job and they do this as a part-time job.
Correct.
And some people also do it full-time basis too.
Correct. Multiple gigs.
Multiple gigs, so to speak. Gig economy can actually help the economy grow really fast. There are benefits to the people who are participating in the gig economy, where they have independence, flexibility, more choices. There are several positive things, but also there are several negative things that I would like to raise.
Please,
because I think it's important that we talk about these things, because if we do not talk about these things and address these issues in a meaningful manner,
Correct.
we are bound to encounter bigger and uncontrollable issues. So as an example,
And Harinda, we love that, because here in BISNOMICS, this is where we give the platform to discuss these problems. So forum is all yours.
Thank you. So one of the things that I would talk about in terms of, let's say, for example, people who are using gig economy to find a job and constantly going from job to job, and let's say a delivery service app or a taxi service as an example, but it's not exclusive to those platforms. What about the job security? When they do not have a job security or they do not have the traditional safety nets, then it will impact their mental health, which can lead to other physical health issues too. Now, as an example, I'm just going to use this one example. We understand in America, because of their lack of universal healthcare system, a lot of the people, when they do get sick, they actually use crowdfunding platforms to pay their medical bills. And many of these people who are in the gig economy, and what does it say? Because they do not have other forms of safety nets.
Like
insurance and sometimes the previous employers, the traditional economy kind of took care of. So if we try to go ahead with these things, I'm not saying do not do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if we are rapidly pumping all our energy towards these new technologies, new business models, we need to actually match that same level of enthusiasm and energy level to address some of the other issues. So if it's crowdfunding, it's an individual marketplace. So you need to now try and perform or try and earn the trust of the people who are donating money for your medical expenses. So if you are from a low income setting, your friends and family might not have disposable income to actually donate towards your health care bills. So it can lead to discrimination. It can lead into other unintended biases. So we need to be mindful in terms of we are not creating an economy that is technology-led humans. We need to have an economy where it's human-led technology. Let me repeat that. Technology-led humans or human-led technologies. This is a fundamental...
The latter is what we need to work towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fundamental question that we need to ask everyone, and how best are we going to address these things? Because otherwise, we are going to be serving the almighty algorithms and the almighty markets, whether to grow the economy or the stock markets, and we are going to lose the humanity.
And that will also, I believe, leave our economy and the people's personal economies as well extremely vulnerable and fragile.
Absolutely, because the thing is, if the social connections are falling apart, what's going to happen is there's going to be uncertainty in the society. There is going to be so many other, let's say, violence or other types of negative aspects happening in the society. It's bad for business.
Absolutely.
Right? So we all know that having a stable environment is good for business. Maybe not for all businesses, like weapons industry might
not like that.
Might not like the stability, but most other businesses will actually benefit from having a stable, predictable future, so to speak, and a stable environment so that they can plan accordingly and grow their businesses accordingly. So we need to make sure that we are not trying to put band-aids to some of these unintended consequences that are going to be generated from the gig economy and any other technologies that we haven't really thought through. So it's important. So this is a very complex topic, and I do not want to offend anyone indirectly. This is why we need to have an open, honest, and above all, respectful discussion. We need to have this discussion, otherwise we as a human race will...
And we have seen problems, isn't it, Harinda? Because even in the US, there are so many examples of people sometimes donating millions of dollars only to later realize that they have actually helped on a crowdfunding platform. They've actually been helping a scam. And as a result, sometimes people with genuine problems kind of don't get the support they need, number one. And number two, even in Sri Lanka, let's admit, even in the early 2000s, there were certain cases where a website comes up, people are told, look, pay some money, get the membership to it, you can be getting work through it. And all of a sudden, once they raise a lot of money, they close shop and they're off. And people lose out the money they had invested as well. So as you very correctly said, gig economy is good. I think that's a great opportunity and potential. But we need to address the finer details, because as they always say, the devil is in the detail. Harinda, let's talk about what kind of projects, coming back into volunteering, what kind of projects do we see most of the volunteers really being interested to get involved in? If you could take about 2 minutes and talk to us about that.
Sure. It all depends on the setting in terms of the demographics, as well as in terms of who's volunteering, what's the age group, the gender, based on their community's needs. So it can vary. But I think, generally speaking, many of the individuals like to volunteer with human interactions. So helping humans, that's something that many of the people like. But having said that, I think I do not want to say these are the things that are trending and these are the things that are trending, because then again, everyone would want to jump on the trend.
Yes.
More than jumping on the trend, it's important to ask yourselves, what's good for me, what's good for the company, what really gets me excited.
Follow your heart.
Well, follow your heart, do some rational thinking, critical thinking, make it a collective team effort, and then do what's best for the community as well as your businesses as well as for each other.
Harinda, on a final note, let's talk about your journey at Good People. So a social network for volunteers and donor management was not always really heard of before. So in your perspective, what was your experience in setting it up? And first of all, congratulations. It's great to see a Sri Lankan social network going global. We only hope that it goes on to become even more popular with each day. And how vital is technology in connecting volunteers around the world?
I think it's crucial because, as I said, the problems are growing. The current mechanisms are inefficient, unsustainable, and not scalable. Most of the charities are currently using the mainstream social media networks to find volunteers, raise awareness, as well as raise funding for their causes. But now there's an issue with that, because now the charities need to compete for our attention with other content on those platforms.
Absolutely.
So if the entertainment value of that content that charity posts is low, then the reach would be lower. So then they need to actually start ramping up their content in terms of the entertainment value of it.
And even maybe paying more money out of but then again paying more money out of the donations they get.
Yeah, but now that's another interesting dilemma that some of the charities are facing. How moral is it to give money to some of these platforms that might be directly and indirectly influencing the problem that they are actually trying to cause?
Catch-22 situation.
Yeah, so I know that some of the charities in UK that are trying to fight hate speech, they are presented with this moral dilemma. Am I going to give money to a platform that is contributing towards hate speech, and they do not have any option? So I think
to what extent they would give reach to such content is another matter.
Yeah.
Because the algorithm of those platforms is not the most transparent.
Yeah, so I think it's important that we ask these questions and select what technologies are going to suit their needs and actually why they are using it. And this is why I strongly believe that the platform that we have designed in terms of the Good People platform, imagine removing all the clutter on the mainstream social media network and having something that is dedicated to doing good in the society. So you get to see on your home feed what your friends are going to do or what they have done, and you're interacting with them, and you see opportunities to get involved in the society. So that we are not in this constant fight or flight situation, because we are constantly bombarded every day. Like, the signal saturation is mind-blowing, right? We are constantly bombarded with negativity day in, day out. Most of the populations are in a paralyzed state. They are in this fight or flight or freeze mode, and they have lost hope and they feel powerless. So I think it's important that we actually give people tools to actually communicate, collaborate, and consume information that are not actually dependent on exploiting your attention.
That's a good way to put it.
Right? So I think Sri Lanka has a bright future. Personally speaking, I think we have a lot of room to grow as a society, as an economy, and I think we think if we all come together, put our minds and our resources together, use the technologies that are currently available to make sure that we are actually positively and meaningfully addressing these issues, we can actually go a long journey.
And let me complete that sentence for you, and that's because civilization is a team sport.
Civilization is a team sport. And I think I strongly believe that Sri Lankans can actually come out of this mess, the current mess that we are in, and we can be a country, a society, a community that gives hope to ourselves and to the rest of the world. And in order to do that, we need to actually focus on the real issues and not get distracted. And I think anything that distracts you from actually addressing real issues, whether it's poverty, whether it's hunger, whether it's climate change, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's inequalities, any of these issues, we need to get our eyes on the goal so that we can collectively address it.
Harinda Fonseka, an absolute delight to hear these thoughts from you, and I only hope that more volunteers would hear this from you and be encouraged to engage with you and your platform, and at the same time more business owners and professionals would also hear these thoughts and start thinking in this direction, because end of the day it's always our duty to do what's right for civilization, because I will reiterate this thought that you have left me mesmerized with. Civilization is a team sport and we all have to contribute.
Let me add one more small thing to it. Just because I say it's a team sport, I think some people might say, okay, fine, I can be a spectator and applaud from the stands, right? Sharing issues or just loudly talking about the issue is not going to solve it. So we need to all get involved. We need to come to the field and we need to show up.
Roll the sleeve up,
roll
get
the
hands
sleeve up,
dirty.
and get involved. And doesn't matter how much you get involved, it's a matter of that you get involved, and then with time we can increase the frequency of getting involved.
Some wonderful thoughts there, Harinda, to end our discussion. Wish you and the Good People platform all the best to make a change in the world.
Thank
all
you
the
very
best
much.
to you.
Thank you.
No matter what industry you may be in, always you could find a little bit of time to volunteer for something that is close to your heart. And you need to do that because, end of the day, the world depends on all of us going beyond and doing that extra bit without expecting anything in return, but for the benefit of this world. And if we keep doing that, it could be just enough to make sure the world at the end of the day has become a better place for us and our future generations. I'm Harinda and I will see you with the next episode. This is BISNOMICS.